Test. Hi, everyone. I'm Macy Mills. I run business development for GameInfluencer. So we help gaming developers and publishers with influencer marketing, how to work with influencers, who you should work with, etc. So we get to work with awesome creators like Sam here, aka Chaotic from YouTube. So maybe we could start with just a brief intro of your channel and what you do.
Certainly. So my name is Sam. I go by the YouTube name Chaotic. And I've been doing YouTube since 2011. Currently, I have, I think, 1.1 million subscribers on YouTube and currently focus on the game GTA. Still remains to be one of the most popular titles out there in the industry at the moment. But with plans to move into a much wider sort of spectrum of gaming over the next 12 months.
Awesome. So how did you originally get into YouTube, setting up your channel, thinking about it as a job? How did that come about?
Obviously, like many, it began with a passion for playing games. And back when I started YouTube and that sort of things, there wasn't really much of a community or a video creating community. But I saw a few people who back in the day would be considered, pretty big influencers with 5,000 to 10,000 subscribers. And I always liked the idea of, making videos myself, putting them up onto YouTube and people around the world seeing them and being able to connect with them. So obviously it's gone from there. And nowadays, 5,000 to 10,000 subscribers is very small, very insignificant. But back then it was, very substantial and was seen as YouTube famous, I guess.
Yeah, and obviously there would be a lot of competition as you started your channel and started creating videos around GTA. What do you think made your channel stand out to where you could sustain it as, I guess, your main source of income for 7 years and kind of keeping a relevant channel today?
A lot of people ask, how do you become where you are? How do you make YouTube, what it is for myself, a full-time job? And it's very relevant to this question because you can't just start tomorrow, play a game, upload a video, and just hope that you become YouTube famous. There is obviously a lot more to it. And I feel like I've achieved what I have because I've continued staying dedicated to what I enjoy doing, and that's making videos, and that's staying on schedule, making videos regularly, doing what I enjoy, obviously making videos that my audience want to see as well.
So you post daily, correct? Videos daily?
Yes, I focus on daily.
Yeah, so if you're, for example, going to a conference like this, you have to have the kind of dedication and motivation to create the videos beforehand. Is that true? Definitely,
although this time around I haven't because I've been busy the last week or so.
Uh-oh, fans are going to be mad. So what do you enjoy the most about being a YouTube creator as your career?
The fact that I can work for myself. I've always wanted to, from I guess, quite a young age, work for myself, run my own business, and YouTube allows you to do that. And just like any self-run business, I set my own sort of timelines. I can do what I want, when I want, and it's sort of interesting to see it grow along with yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess, YouTube is your main employer, so to speak. So how does YouTube as a platform and other social platforms support you as a creator?
So with YouTube being, I guess I classify it as a full-time job now, it is my main source of income. That's, I guess, how they support me as an influencer through what they provide, the revenue side of things. I recently partnered up with Facebook Gaming as well, which is a fairly new live streaming feature they now have. And that's something else as well I'm looking to move more into in the next 12 months or so.
Awesome. So you're live streaming on Facebook then?
Yes.
What games are you playing?
Fortnite. I think pretty much everyone is nowadays who does gaming. But not just Fortnite. I'm doing that because it's one of the games I really enjoy at the moment. But again, I'm hoping to do a lot more in the next 12 months.
Awesome. Very cool. And so as you see these platforms kind of evolving, like you've been with YouTube for 7 years now, where do you see it going in the next few years? What kind of trends do you see coming to YouTube and other platforms?
So the live streaming industry is definitely, blowing up in the last, well, it has in the last year or two, with obviously YouTube gaming, Facebook gaming, and other platforms as well, sort of mentioning and discussing the plans to go forward with that. But also competitive play as well. Esports and that industry is also, on the brink of skyrocketing, and I'm sure everyone's heard about the recent announcement from Epic Games and their plans with Fortnite to spend a lot of money in the next 12 months on that.
Awesome. So how many of you have worked with influencers in the past to promote your products? How many of you are interested in working with influencers in the past or in the future? Okay, so as an influencer whose inbox gets flooded with different advertisements and people trying to get you to promote their product, what's the go-to thing to say? What will get you interested in a product? What's the best way to approach someone like you?
I feel like going with a very one-on-one approach, not just contacting anybody and everyone that you've got an email to, but being very direct and making sure that the person you're contacting is obviously relevant to what it is that you want to promote. Without naming any examples, I receive daily emails from companies who want to sell products and services which aren't even related to what I do, GTA and gaming. And also making sure that the approach is not just very, very formal and very business-like, but also quite casual and friendly as well. Not just for myself, but I found like a lot of the creators are quite young or much younger than myself. And obviously they don't want to be approached by a company who they may not know or be quite intimidated by if they're using big words and that sort of thing. So just a very friendly and sort of one-on-one approach, not just the sort of copy and paste emails.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of your audience, what platform are you playing on? And then what would you say your audience is most interested in? Console, PC, mobile?
So I mainly play on PC nowadays. I'd say I haven't really touched my consoles in 2 years or so. But that's just because I feel like PC has a much, as I'm sure everyone knows, a much larger potential and will eventually sort of dominate the console market. But as for my audience, I think nowadays it's around sort of 80 to 85% play on Xbox and PlayStation. But we have seen, especially with games like Fortnite, a massively growing mobile community as well. So I live stream on Facebook, and I obviously play games like Fortnite, and we see a large amount of people who are on mobile wanting to get involved in the streams, and it's a surprising amount of people.
Yeah, and do you let them get involved? How do you interact with your audience in general?
So on the live streaming side of things, especially when we play games like GTA and Fortnite, we can obviously invite fans in and people who are watching, and they can be a part of the stream. I like to think that we have built up a community where we can do that and try and get them involved and play the games, not just sort of in the live stream, but they can speak on the stream as well. Obviously on YouTube, you can sort of do that through the live streaming, but with videos, just interacting in the comment section, trying to, offer what you can when you can.
So you feel like you know your audience pretty well then. So what do you look for, when you're looking at products to promote to them that makes it interesting for them and interesting for you to work with a gaming company?
This is something that's very important when it comes to reaching out to influencers like myself, understanding that we know our audiences better than anybody else. So when we make a suggestion or an idea or we have thoughts, it's worth bearing that in mind. That, again, the number of companies that have reached out, I tell them what I think will work, and they want something completely different. It doesn't make any sense because, again, I know my audience better than anybody else does. So when it comes to looking at what I do want to promote and what I want to share with my audience, I see it, when I look at it, do I enjoy it? Am I behind this item or this game? If I'm not, there's a good chance that my audience and community won't be, because they obviously enjoy and share similar thoughts to myself. That's why they watch my videos over other people.
Yeah, and as we have a lot of, I would assume, mobile publishers in the room, is there anything as, a PC influencer who has, largely console audience, is there anything specifically within mobile that you feel makes it more interesting, whether that's genres or certain things you like to see when it comes to promoting a mobile game?
At least with myself, it just comes down to something that's fairly relevant to my content. So being very specific with, at least on YouTube, with my videos being based around GTA, Stuff that's kind of similar to that on that side of things. So certainly relevancy, even if it is on a platform that my audience don't primarily play on, as long as it's fairly similar, I'm sure they'll be willing to give it a try, as we've tested in the past and has worked.
Awesome. And then when it comes to your income, is it mostly from the CPMs? Is it split with brand deals? What does that look like, if you don't mind sharing?
So again, YouTube is my full-time job. It's the way that I see it, and I'd say the majority of my income does come from that, with a very small amount really coming from third-party, sponsorships, promotions. I'm going to guess maybe 10% from that side of things, but yeah, the majority is from YouTube and that side of things. And
as we know, we work together, but in general, are you often working with other agencies, or is it mostly people coming in directly with their own product? What does that landscape look like when you're getting sort of inbound leads for doing sponsored deals?
Surprisingly, despite the number of agencies out there and the increasing number, most brands prefer to go direct and work one-on-one, which works pretty well, cutting out the middleman. But at the same time, as we discussed in one of the previous questions, it's about going to the creators who are obviously relevant to what it is they want to promote. And that's why people like GameInfluencer, they have contacts for all the different influencers that are relevant to what it is that you want to promote. But yeah, most of the brands will come direct, and more often than not, I'll say that it's not relevant really to my content. It's not something I can get behind because it's not something that I have interest in myself, and that's why it's important to work with agencies.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that we see is just people, like you said before, copy pasting, not really knowing their influencer, just spamming a bunch of people, and at that rate, you're not going to get influencers who are dedicated to their content. So, as someone who's kind of working with the people that do the outreach, I appreciate that you actually, read every email and see if that product works for you, because a lot of influencers are just out there for a cash grab and won't actually be able to convert users. So, appreciate that. So, what do you think about in general with the gaming industry? Where do you see the gaming industry trending? What are the hot trends? What type of games do you think will be coming in the future?
As I'm sure you guys would all agree, 2018 is the year of the Battle Royale, as we've seen so far, and there are many major titles at the moment sort of discussing, and it has been rumored that we'll see more and more of that coming. But again, as I mentioned before, competitive play with these games is something that's going to be focused on as well with a lot of these up-and-coming titles. So I think that'll be where a lot of companies want to go.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can all agree with that. And then when it comes to data that you're given from YouTube, for example, or Facebook, what kind of information can you share with an influencer as a creator that we can't particularly see on the front end?
So YouTube have a very, very good analytic system where you have access to pretty much everything. You can see who's watching your video, obviously country-based, the age of these people based upon the numbers they've put in themselves. You can obviously see the audience retention, how long they're watching the video for. You can see sort of drop-offs on graphs, so where people have obviously skipped certain sections of the video, where they're coming back into. The amount of data you can share is pretty substantial, and they obviously have plans to increase that as much as possible with a new dashboard that's currently in beta, but releasing, I think, later this year.
Awesome. And then, did you mention audience demographics as well? Yeah, awesome. And then what about on Facebook?
I haven't really looked into the Facebook side of things just yet. I know they do have a pretty good system as well, but not something that I've looked into to share with companies as of yet.
Right. So I see there's a lot of people in the room. Maybe we want to go ahead and open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions for Sam.
Hello, mic check. Hi. So you mentioned earlier that when advertisers come to you, you want to make sure that their product fits the type of content. I'm out of curiosity, do you also take into account if the product itself would be of interest to your audience, or is it only content?
As I explained before, I think it's important that I have to like the content myself, and I feel like if I like it, something that I can get behind, my audience will as well. Like I said, I know my audience very well, like every influencer, and with my content being very specific, and most people who watch me more for the content than myself, I'd like to think that if I like something, they'll like it as well.
Hey there, obviously as a YouTube influencer, I guess that's how a lot of people started out, and it was the predominant channel. With options like Facebook Gaming, Twitch, MLG TV and so on, how has that split number of channels evolved for YouTubers such as yourself, and how do you reconcile that? How do you operate on 4 platforms and not 1?
So if I'm honest, until this month, I've primarily just focused on YouTube. I've always wanted to branch out and sort of try other platforms. But it's only from this month where I've started doing a bit with Facebook, and I can now build up a completely separate audience alongside my YouTube platform. But obviously there are different audiences on different platforms. I know Twitch has obviously mostly a live streaming platform, but you often see that people will watch someone on Twitch and maybe not watch them on YouTube because of just a difference in communities.
Hi, how you doing? I wanted to ask about, is there certain mechanics that you think games can benefit from when it comes to not only streaming, but also showing? So for example, you're saying GTA, one of the good things is that even if you play it a lot, there's a lot of emerging gameplay. It's always different. Are there certain mechanics that you find in games that help retain viewers, basically, or be able to show it again and again and not bore viewers?
Well, the reason why games like GTA have done so well and have lasted almost 5 years, and Fortnite is growing further and further, is because they are constantly receiving updates, and these are free. So whereas in the past, paid DLC was very big with a lot of companies, we're seeing more and more now focusing towards a very similar approach to both Rockstar and Epic Games, where they're releasing content for free and allowing then microtransactions to cover the cost of doing that. And that is very important, I feel, and a lot more companies who aren't considering it should. And I think one noticeably recently was EA, who announced that with their next title, Battlefield 5, they will not be doing season passes, they won't be doing paid DLC, it's all going to be free.
I have a quick one, actually. So it seems like platforms tend to focus a lot, or influencers tend to play like a few games. Like right now, you're playing Fortnite, as is anybody who wants to grow their channel. And like even in mobile, like on Mob Crush, which tends to be like the mobile first streaming platform, you see people playing PUBG and Fortnite. Whether that's the mobile version or not is irrelevant. What can the platforms themselves do to create a more open environment for more titles to get out there?
So the reason why, obviously, a lot of games have done well or have grown is because of the presence and the number of people on platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitch playing them. So I guess sort of encouraging a larger amount of influencers to cover the game, to build traffic and interest. And as you have a few influencers covering a game, you have other influencers who maybe aren't involved with the brand of the game directly, seeing that and being influenced to try it out and play it themselves.
Maybe I'll add to that. You can probably talk more on this, but YouTube changed their kind of trending section, what they promote. And I also think that, for example, YouTube could promote more games than kind of the hot ones, so to speak, rather than kind of continually promoting Fortnite channels and things like that. Would you agree?
Definitely. But again, the reason why we're seeing that, where YouTube is promoting a lot of recommended and similar content, is because they're trying to drive what's doing well, the hot topics, as opposed to allowing new content and new ideas, I guess, out there, which is unfortunate and not something which I personally agree with and other influencers agree with. But unfortunately, when it comes to that side of things, we don't have any say on where the platform goes. YouTube don't really take much into consideration when it comes to feedback. I wish they would, but definitely an issue.
So it seems like angry or funny content really does well, getting viewers, but that also could make brands very nervous. And I wonder how you sort of reconcile that, and whether you sort of moderate your behavior in some way, you know, if it is an advertiser that you're working with here?
Again, definitely, and it is something which we have had issues with in the past. Obviously, I do GTA, which is a pretty explicit title, to say the least. And there are some companies that don't want to be affiliated to that. And obviously now with YouTube's new ad policy that came in last year, where when people are advertising direct with Google and YouTube, they can choose whether they're advertised on certain videos if they're considered unfriendly. And that's something which, again, we've talked about a lot, influencers last year, and is still sort of being brushed under the rug, but we aren't really happy with. But to sort of answer that question, it would just come down to if a brand doesn't like a particular content, find someone else. There's always someone else out there that will apply to that specification.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it definitely depends on the brand. Like we have clients who will work with anyone, no matter what they've said or done, because they have huge audiences and they'd like to work with them. But there's also people who have us search through every single tweet, every single Instagram post, every single YouTube video to make sure they're completely brand safe. It's just, I think, how they manage their marketing business in general is how we decide which influencers are the best fit for them.
Hi. Are there any tips or wishes you would like to give to game developers, like make your game more streamable or more approachable for streamers in particular?
Going back to what someone mentioned before, it's about replayability. So making a game that people want to play not just once, but keep on playing, and ensuring that the game has a lot of immersion to it. So again, it's not just sort of one line you can go down, but there's numerous. And again, using GTA as the sort of game that I mostly focus on, it's like a world inside of a world. There's different things you can do in every direction, whether it's run like a criminal business, you can do races, you can do various different jobs and missions. Obviously, you've got the single player aspect to it as well. So just basically ensuring that the games have a lot more to them than just one basic like storyline, I guess.
Yeah, we were talking last night about, you know, sometimes he streams for 4 hours, and I'm like, do you get bored? Like, do you realize it's 4 hours? But you were saying with games like Fortnite, it just goes by so fast.
Even though it's so repetitive, you think, you know, you drop down, you pick up weapons, you pick up different items, maybe get a kill or two, and then die before the end. You might think that's just the same process over and over and over again, but you can see there are people streaming games like Fortnite 10 hours a day with very little breaks, and it's because they offer so much. Even though it's such a small and simplistic game, really, it's a different experience every time. It's not just you're jumping in, it's the same thing over and over, like you might find with, I guess, doing a race in GTA. You aren't going around the same track. You're jumping in, you can go to a different location, different weapons. Everyone's doing different things, and that's what's important when it comes to games like Fortnite.
Well, I'll ask mine while I get over there for the microphone. So I was curious, in mobile we talk a lot about like core gameplay and meta gameplay. In terms of replayability, how important is the meta gameplay to you? In terms of, in Fortnite there's not much of a progression. You buy skins or you don't. It's really about the core gameplay. But have you experimented much with games that sort of focus more on the meta gameplay, and has that been important in replayability for you?
Again, with my content, it's very limited to just GTA, so I can't really say too much on that one.
You mentioned you specialize in GTA. How does one go about finding influencers that do a particular style of game? For instance, I do role-playing and adventure games. So where would I find people to approach and say, hey, would you like to stream our game?
So YouTube does have like a category system, I guess. But the easiest way, I should imagine, is you find a game that's similar to that. So let's say we'll take GTA as an example. You just search up, let's say GTA 5, go to the first video, and then go to their channel page. And on the About page, you'll find an email. Then there'll be a list of channels alongside theirs, and there'll be like recommended and similar channels, and they often cover the same stuff, and you can find plenty of channels that way. Or alternatively, you can speak to, without plugging them too much, an influencer marketing agency who obviously have contacts in obviously they specialize with gaming, everyone. So if there's a particular type of influencer you're looking for, they already have the contacts established there.
Yeah, I was going to say shameless plug. We have a database of 6 million influencers, so we always start with a database query. So for example, typing in similar games, seeing who's playing them, what these channels look like, what their demographics look like, everything like that. And then from there, you know, utilizing personal connections to be able to touch base with them and see if they're interested in the title.
And I find you where?
Macy at GameInfluencer.com or after right here.
Hi, me again. This question is about payment. When an advertiser approaches you and you like their product and you agree to feature their product on your stream, how does payment work? Do they do like a flat fee with you, or do you guys work out like a cost per install or cost per conversion kind of thing?
As for myself, I aim for either the flat fee or CPM based promotions. I'm not really into the CPIs. I've done one or two in the past, and it's very difficult to sort of track and get an understanding on how well it's done, and you have to sort of go on the assumption that you trust the person that's telling you what numbers are being generated. So yeah, influencers like myself, we focus on the flat fee and the CPM based out there, but there is always someone out there that will consider other opportunities, and again, Macy's the person to speak to on that one.
Yeah, I would say speaking from influencer marketing as a whole, CPM and fixed price, it's definitely like fixed at the top. You won't get CPM. Then in the middle is like fixed or CPM in terms of size. And then at the bottom, like not at the bottom, but the smaller influencers, micro influencers, you may be able to strike CPI deals, but it's definitely more difficult to find influencers these days because they're getting approached by so many brands at this point. They're like, well, we can do CPM, we might as well do that. Any other questions? So I was going to bring back up so you mentioned the analytics on the back end for YouTube that you can share with an advertiser. Maybe we can speak a bit about how tracking works from there. Like when you work with a game, like how do you promote it, tracking links, etc., so that we can get a better understanding there.
So often, let's say I used to promote someone through a dedicated video, they would provide the tracking link, and they would then track the visits and the downloads or installs on their side. More often than not, they don't share that data with me. They just say if it did well or didn't. Personally, I'd like to receive that data to obviously then share in the future, but most people don't want to do that for that reason. I can use it for my own benefit rather than theirs.
Yeah, I think that's what we see as well. It's definitely dependent on the publisher if they're open to kind of sharing that data, but to be able to optimize a campaign and work with more influencers who are similar and can get the job done, it's definitely better if you're able to share the data. I think we
got time for one more.
I have one question about growth hacking on YouTube. How do you find new ideas? I guess, recommendation algorithms are changing and game is changing. So yeah, that's a question. Thanks.
Finding ideas is definitely something quite different or difficult. But again, I'm very focused on GTA, and you might think that playing the same game and making videos on that for 5 years must be pretty difficult, but it updates every week. There's new content being added all the time. There's always some change being made. So on that side of things, it's pretty easy, but I know there are other influencers out there. It's quite difficult to decide on what video you're going to make that day, or if you're going away to an event like this one, what videos you're going to pre-make for that, for as long as a week or 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Round of applause.